The best deals are found at Hoffman GMC, Ohio's largest GMC truck store. Get 0% for 72 months or $5,000 cash on most remaining 2010 GMC Sierra trucks. Visit them on the web at HoffmanGMC.com.
This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Doc Thompson On Demand.
All right, this special advertising supplement in the Inquirer for Cincinnati Public Schools, it looks like it may be paid by a group of people or a group of organizations. Because at the top of it, it mentions, along with Cincinnati Public Schools, University of Cincinnati, Cincinnati State, Cincinnati Youth Collaborative, the Reds, the Bengals, the Inquirer, Parents for Public Schools, the United Way. It just has them kind of small at the top underneath Gear Up Scores. Now, here's the thing. If they are paying for it, if it's not, I mean, the schools are mentioned as well, so if they're all paying for it, I guess they're taking a share of it too. But any of these other groups that are paying for this, why isn't that money going to the schools? Why are you advertising toward kids on a format that they're not going to see? Nothing against the Inquirer. They do a great job. Kids aren't generally reading the newspaper. So if you're telling me the school is short of money, which most schools are right now, this is something we're all facing. And all of these different groups, the Bengals, the Reds, the public schools, United Way, all of these groups, why are you spending it on a 4-page ad in the Inquirer? This isn't even directed at the parents. It's directed at the kids. I would think the money you're spending here could be better spent at the school somehow. Really, there's nothing you need at the school that this 10, 20, whatever, thousands of dollars, these recurring ads in the Inquirer cost? You can't find a better place to spend that money? I'm sure the people there, the students, maybe the teachers that are going to be asked to take, less money than they wanted, sure, those people could come up with something. Just seems a little odd to me. Rich Hoffman joins me now. Rich Hoffman is from NoLakotaLevy.com, instrumental in stopping that ridiculous Lakota levy that was on the ballot just a month ago. And first of all, I have to applaud you for your efforts as far as that goes, Rich.
Thank you very much.
But you're not stopping there.
Oh, no, it's just the beginning. That's if you're looking at a football field, that's just the first set of first downs.
I love it. I am so glad that you're involved. Anytime anybody gets involved, arms themselves with knowledge and goes out there and says and does what's right, I applaud you. So now we've got a situation because the levy wasn't passed because of you, Rich. It's all your fault.
Right.
Now parents are going to have to drive their kids to school.
I've received plenty of hate mail, lots of hate mail. It's my fault that they don't have a bus to take their kid to school.
So are you thinking that, much like I mentioned in the place to spend the money with Cincinnati Public Schools, there may be other ways that they could cut or save money than the busing?
Oh, yeah. Busing, the ridiculous aspect of and I was shocked that the school board had with as much contention as was in this last election. 2 weeks later, they just announced they were cutting busing, and that's after they announced deficits originally of $28 million, then $10 million, and then the reality was it was only going to be $4 million that they were going to be a deficit. They didn't adjust their numbers at all to deal with that. And so right on schedule, they announced they were going to cut busing start of the year, just like we all assumed they would, but it was kind of shocking that it was that's predictable. There's a lot of ways they could cut money, but the busing only occupies 2% of the entire $160 million budget.
So the entire budget's about $160 million. The busing is $2.8 million. Is that right?
Yeah. I've seen two different figures, $2.8 million and $3.8 million, somewhere. And so, within that range is what it costs to bus all 18,000 students for an entire year at Lakota.
So I saw a video, the most recent video you have, and I put a link at 700WLW.com, and you lay out the budget allocation, and I think it's pretty effective because of the $160 million budget for Lakota school system. Almost $121 million, 120.7 of that goes to one specific area. Almost all of it, the lion's share goes where, Rich?
It's to salaries and benefits. And what they said when we had this argument before. Well, it's a service industry, so that tends to be your largest piece of the pie. Well, that's fine. But when you say you have a fiscal emergency and you have to have an emergency levy on the ballot, then you have to ask, well, why don't you deal with that piece of the pie? We understand that it might be your largest, the largest expense you have, but you have to attack the largest expense when you find out you don't have enough money to support it. And that's not being done. Instead, they attack the 2% thing. And it had almost no bearing at all on their overall costs.
Now, if you've got, as their first reaction is, we're going to go ahead and cut busing, that's where we're going to come. And like I said, 120 million of their 160 million is for employee wages and benefits and that. Rich, I've got a way right off that they could take 100,000 of that needed couple million. I got 100,000 right here. What if, and just hear me out, this is crazy talk, but what if during a fiscal emergency where they're now telling parents that they have to drive their kids or they're going to have to walk or whatever it is, what if the top 9 paid people in the school district, all making over $100,000, took a 10% pay cut?
They would save a lot of money.
Huh.
That is a radical idea. I can't believe you came up with that. That's
wild.
That's an amazing concept. But you know something? They have $31 million of their $120 million budget is tied up in people making over $65,000 a year. And really, I mean, that's where a community has to say, can we really afford to have everybody at the top of the wage ladder like that? And the people they're going to cut, people who are new teachers, low tenure teachers. And it really isn't going to do a whole lot to take care of your overall expenditure problem. It's the top wage earners that are your major issue. And when you read off your list of every school system has this problem. When you read off your list of all the contributors, these are people just trying to stave off the inevitable. This is an unsustainable model. You see it in every single public sector, whether you're talking about the Paul Brown Stadium issue, whether you're talking about the trolley, the train going to Columbus. All this is born from the same big government ideas. And unfortunately, this has migrated into teaching, and they've placed themselves on our kids.
Have any of the administrator positions, principal positions, other than teachers, been cut or had their salaries cut in recent memory in Lakota?
Well, the only thing they've said they've done is they haven't taken a pay increase for quite some time.
Well, guess what? I haven't taken a pay increase, and a lot of others haven't either.
Many people haven't. That's the age we live in. And when you realize that, well, even if your wage is excessively high, there's no kudos because you didn't take an increase. You have to kind of look at that responsibly and say, you know what? I'm hurting my district because I'm making too much. And to guard it by saying we're going to cut busing to 18,000 students and force 9,000 students on the road every single morning, a lot of kids that are just learning to drive, they're going to all of a sudden be cast into situations where they're going to have to drive themselves to school, and there will be accidents, there will be injuries. And when you proclaim, you put signs out saying it's all about kids, and you have these little smiling faces and people are holding hands, and then you throw them out into a November afternoon or morning with almost no experience to drive yourself, because we don't want to deal with our real problem.
So if you have a situation like we've laid out where there are budget issues, something has to be done, the levy wasn't passed, and one of their first reactions is we're going to have to cut busing. What is their motivation for cutting busing? Because I have my speculation.
Pure extortion. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And I hate to say it because I like a lot of people on both sides of the aisle.
Sure.
In the Lakota school system. But the strategy is pure extortion. I mean, there isn't any other. If you had someone with a gun to their head telling me, I'll let them go if you give me this, that's extortion. And when you say, pass this levy, get it going in this direction, and we'll give you back your busing, that's extortion. When the superintendent makes a very irresponsible statement and says we can no longer afford to service the community the way we have. But you can't afford to pay people $65,000 and more and sustain that over a long period of time.
See,
that doesn't make any sense.
I'm talking with Rich Hoffman. He has NoLakotaLevy.com, and he's certainly not stopping there or talking about some of the other budget issues. Here's the thing. If the principal or the superintendent and the administrators came to you and said, here's the problem. we're with you, Rich. We realize that this is an unsustainable model. So maybe we're going to plan on doing away with busing altogether. We're going to cut back on some of these other programs. I personally would not have a problem if that was not the only place that they were talking about cutting. In other words, if they said across the board, we need to get a handle on this model, and maybe we're going to do something different and not provide busing. That's, part of a plan where we're cutting administrators and salaries and some classes. We're not going to build these cathedrals and call them schools anymore. I would say, okay, that's fine. But when you're coming at this right after the levy, I mean, this is weeks later, Rich. Weeks later. Yeah, 2 weeks after the election, and they say now it's going to be busing. Who does that hurt? It doesn't hurt the administration.
Nope. No, they don't change a thing. They really are. And I some of the mail I received, and there's things I love to share, and I just hope that I get the opportunity to share it with you guys, because some of the sources that we've been given don't want their name smeared out. But there are people from the inside who agree with what you and I are talking about, and they feel bad when you look at yourself in the mirror and you say one thing publicly and you feel one thing privately. That's starting to happen. You're starting to see the cracks in our community where some people just flat out realize that, hey, they're on the wrong side of this. And maybe they should do something responsibly, but they're afraid to really take that big step and go forward.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, I was say is, I recognize teachers work hard, and I want you to make a good salary. In fact, I'll tell you what, teachers, I think you should make a better than average salary. Let's go ahead and base it on your performance. I don't want to give you tenure. I want you to be like the private sector where you go in and you work hard because, let's face it, a lot of teachers are passionate and they do want to educate. Good for you. I got your back. I'm with you. But we have a couple of situations. Your salaries in many cases have grown disproportionately, and they have hired too many teachers. Now, teachers, you are, in my opinion, not the biggest target, the biggest problem. It comes down to administration, and I'm sure there's a lot of teachers that would recognize the waste when it comes to administrators.
Oh, they do. My father-in-law is a teacher. He has a master's degree. He's a geology teacher. He's over 65. He doesn't make that much, but he also elected not to be in a union. And he's very proud of that. And I would suggest that to a lot of teachers out there, we love you, we want to support you as a community, but we don't want all the other stuff that's attached to the organized labor portion of this. There's a way to do this and still be reasonable and fair to everybody. But to take excessive amounts is not going to be acceptable because we can't sustain this in the future. K-6's not going to – when they announce their cuts in their 2011 budget, education is not going to be very high. It's only going to get worse. And so this is only going to compound the problem. And they're going to have to deal with it sooner or later. I mean, every school district in Ohio is going to have to do this. So we might as well have the realistic discussion now.
It's funny. I think you touched on something there. To you teachers out there, if you want to make this work, and teachers have known for years that this is unsustainable and it's crazy, then the teachers have to help us, Rich. They have to help us by agreeing to this idea of if you're a good teacher, we want you there and we want you paid pretty well. But let's get rid of this notion that suddenly if you have 30 kids in a classroom versus 28, the whole world's going to go to an end and the kids aren't going to learn. Because the fact is, many of us grew up in a situation where there were 30, 35 kids in a classroom.
Right. And a lot of the foreign powers that are beating us in education are beating us under much worse conditions, in larger class sizes, and definitely don't have the resources we have.
Right. So teachers, help us help you. Stop playing this game and sucking up to the union or believe in their BS. Get in line with us. We're going to take care of you. We're going to do it right. But let's start being honest here. I think that's the key.
Precisely.
All right, Rich Hoffman from NoLakotaLevy.com. And like I said, I put a link in the video. People have to see your video that you did. It's pretty enlightening at my blog, 700WLW.com.
All right.
Thank you so much. Keep me posted, buddy.
All right, thanks. See ya.
Yeah, you got to check out this video. When you see the numbers laid out in pie chart form, that out of the 160 million, almost 121 million is salaries and benefits and bonuses and stuff like that. It is salary, staff costs. It says a whole lot. Now, of course, in most businesses, that's going to be, the majority of what they spend money on. That's going to be one of the the major expense. But isn't that the first place you'd cut then, as opposed to busing? I'll give you some more details, get to some of your calls. Coming up on 700 WLW.